presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I will present my presentation about urban sprawl and urbanization process in Kazakhstan. So the urbanization is one of the significant drivers of economic growth, influencing productivity, labor market, and the spatial development. And according to United Nations, nowadays, more than 55% of the world global population lives in urban areas. And they move to cities, it's approximately 180,000 people move to cities, to urban areas, from cities and the urban areas. The aim of this research is to analyze urbanization and urban sprawl in Kazakhstan, focusing on their economic, social, and environmental impacts. From an economic perspective, urbanization leads to agglomeration, affecting productivity and investment. It refers to growth of cities, while urban sprawl describes the uncontrolled expansion of urban areas into rural areas. Urbanization in Kazakhstan developed in several key historical stages, starting from Silk Roads, cities like Otrar, Turkestan, and Taraz. And the second is urban development continued during the Russian imperial expansion, and later Soviet industrialization, and after the independence. And nowadays, in Kazakhstan, there are 89 cities and more than 6,500 urban settlements, with the strong and major cities such as Almaty, Astana, and Shymkent. And these cities generate significant part of the country's GDP and server output. Economic and social impact of urbanization. Urbanization plays a key role in economic development by concentrating labor and capital infrastructure in large cities. For example, in Almaty, the population increased from 1.6 million in 2014, more than 2.5 million in 2024. And while employment rose from 1.1 till 2%. However, this concentration also creates regional economic imbalance and overdependence on the major cities. About social impacts of the urbanization, urbanization improves access to education, healthcare, and the public services. Government programs such as Nurul Jer aim to make housing affordable, while programs like İnbek support employment and labor market. Rapid urbanization also leads to environmental externalities. Air pollution, especially in Almaty, drives by industrial activity and traffic concentration. So to address these challenges, Kazakhstan is implementing smart cities as sustainable development strategies. Digital governments and the e-government system improve efficiently, reduce the transaction cost, and enhance public services. And the Export 2017 promoted renewable energy and green technologies, contributing to modernization of Astana. In conclusion, urbanization in Kazakhstan represents both an opportunity and challenges. It drives economic growth, increases productivity, and supports modernization. However, it also spatial inequality, environment pressure, and infrastructure. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Next candidate is Priyanka Babu Eklambe, and present the thesis with Professor Bruni.
Priyanka is presenting a thesis in place marketing, and she worked on tactical urbanism and on the role of tactical urbanism in developing the place attachment among citizens. So please, Priyanka, present your thesis.
Good morning, respected members of Academic Committee, Professor Robert Bruni, and distinguished guests. I'm Priyanka Eklambe, and I'll be presenting my master thesis titled The Role of Tactical Urbanism in Creating Citizen Place Attachment. This title is within the framework of place marketing. When we think about place marketing, we talk about attracting tourist investments and opportunities. Cities promote the landmark using these factors in order to place themselves competitively in the global market. However, a very important question arises. Can cities really promote itself without its citizens being emotionally attached to it? Well, this is the very same idea of my research. A successful place marketing starts with its own residents. When citizens are emotionally attached to the places, they automatically become ambassadors of their own cities. However, the objective is to understand how tactical urbanism creates citizen place attachment and how this connection ultimately supports more authentic and effective place marketing strategies. In order to understand this relationship, the thesis focuses on three main questions. The first one is, what inspires, designs, and implements tactical urbanism in communities? The second one is, what roles do government, citizens, and associations play in tactical urbanism? And the third one is, how does tactical urbanism create citizen place attachment? This thesis focuses on qualitative multi-method approach in order to answer these three questions. The first one is literature review, the second one is case study analysis, the third one is interview insights, the fourth one is thematic synthesis, and finally the fifth one, conclusion. This thesis focuses on important theoretical concepts of literature review. The first one is tactical urbanism, which is a low-cost, small-scale urban intervention in order to improve public spaces. This also gives chance to the cities to experience urban solutions before implementing it permanently. And the second one is place attachment, which describes about social, functional, and emotional bonds that the citizens create with their own places. However, previous studies do suggest that tactical urbanism fosters place attachment through four factors, like microdesign, co-creation, safety, and governance. However, the success of these initiatives totally depends upon the collaboration of government, citizens, and associations. Later on, during the literature review, I also identified a key research gap, that is, tactical urbanism has been studied through urban planning, but limited attention has been given on its psychological place attachment factor. In order to address this gap, I combined literature review, case study, and interview insights. Later on, the findings were evaluated using the factors like post-occupancy evolution indicators, comfort, safety, and sociability. And it did confirm the four pathways linking tactical urbanism to place attachment. Later on, to understand the theory in practical world, I analyzed 3 international case studies, starting with Milan, the Piazza Aperte. This project was done to reclaim public spaces, to activate unused spaces, and to improve comfort by reducing the disputes between pedestrian and vehicular users. This intervention used design elements like painted public squares, temporary street furniture, temporary pedestrian streets, and by using planters. And this did confirm that the intervention fosters place attachment by improving comfort, by enhancing community engagement, and by giving chance to the residents to identify themselves with their own places. The second case study is Rue École in Paris, where the school streets were closed for the vehicular movement during the opening and the closing hours in order to prioritize pedestrian safety for the school children and families. The third case study is low-traffic urban neighborhood school streets in London, where the vehicular movement was stopped in the residential areas so that they experience more quieter, safer, walkable lanes. These 3 case studies did confirm that tactical urbanism fosters place attachment by improving comfort, safety, and by experiencing experience-driven place marketing strategies, and urban identity. Later on, to connect the theory to the practical work, I interviewed 4 professionals working across urban design, NGOs, and municipal institutions. The insights that I received is that intervention does foster place attachment by using micro-design, co-creation, and comfort. The key gap is that there is limited tracking of place attachment factor, and co-creation fosters stewardship and volunteership. The lessons that I learned is that behavioral metrics always reveal the cues like comfort, volunteership, advocacy, and volunteership. Micro-design must suit specific users, and urban planners and designers must use street as iterable prototype. Successful pilots use double horizon strategy, anticipating the future permanence. Later on, to understand the findings and the implications, I use thematic synthesis, combining the literature review, case study, and interview insights, and it did show the 90% of alignment between theory and work. The findings are as follows. Interventions always evolve from temporary to permanent. The attachment is also reflected by repeated use, more dwelling time, volunteership, and advocacy. Co-creation does foster stewardship and belonging. The implications are as follows. Theoretically, tactical urbanism is a resident-centered approach where value is created and measured by bonding and belonging. And later on, the urban planners and the designers must use streets as iterable prototype guided by behavioral metrics and inclusive co-creation. The associations must ensure equity between government and citizens. Branding must focus upon the social community narratives and on digital marketing. The future research must focus upon longitudinal tracking and place attachment scales and also social media marketing. In conclusion, I would like to say that tactical urbanism is not just a temporary intervention, but a strategic place marketing tool, which builds value and attachment by using co-creation, safety, and governance. This also informs that tactical urbanism shifts from temporary top-down branding to resident-centered approach, where they become stewards and advocates of their own neighborhood. Ultimately, the collaboration of government, citizens, and associations built more authentic, effective, and sustainable neighborhoods. And here I conclude my speech. Thank you, academic committee and guests, for your patience and attention. I would like to express my gratitude to Professor Roberto Bruni for his constant support and guidance. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Priyanka.
Grazie. Thank you. Adesso l'ultima candidata, la dottoressa Anna Ciardi, che presenta una tesi con la professoressa Micheli.
Sì, Anna si è occupata del tema della creazione di valore, in particolare è andata ad analizzare un caso di studio, ha effettuato una comparazione tra 3 banche, l'Intesa San Paolo, l'Unicredit e il Monte Paschi di Siena. Lascio a te la parola, Anna, grazie.
Buongiorno a tutti, sono Anna Ciardi e oggi espongo la mia analisi riguardo la creazione di valore e la solidità patrimoniale nel sistema bancario italiano, con particolare riferimento a Intesa San Paolo, Unicredit e Monte dei Paschi di Siena. Il sistema bancario svolge un ruolo fondamentale nel funzionamento dell'economia, poiché attraverso l'intermediazione finanziaria trasforma il risparmio in risorse destinate al finanziamento di imprese e famiglie. Per garantire stabilità e fiducia nel sistema finanziario è fondamentale che gli istituti bancari mantengano un equilibrio tra solidità patrimoniale e capacità di generare valore. L'obiettivo del presente lavoro è analizzare congiuntamente tali dimensioni, analizzando alcuni istituti bancari nel triennio 2022-2024 e utilizzando indicatori di solidità patrimoniale e di redditività. In ambito bancario, la creazione di valore rappresenta la capacità di una banca di generare risultati economici sostenibili nel tempo, attraverso un utilizzo efficiente delle proprie risorse, garantendo un'adeguata remunerazione agli azionisti e rafforzando la stabilità patrimoniale e la fiducia del mercato. La solidità patrimoniale invece rappresenta la capacità di una banca di far fronte a perdite inattese e garantire continuità operativa anche in condizioni economiche sfavorevoli. È un presupposto fondamentale per la fiducia di risparmiatori, investitori e mercato, poiché indica quanto un istituto sia stabile, prudente e affidabile nel tempo. In termini operativi, ciò implica mantenere adeguati livelli di capitale rispetto ai rischi assunti e sostenere in modo equilibrato l'erogazione del credito e la crescita dell'attività bancaria. L'analisi è stata condotta su 3 istituti bancari differenti tra loro per dimensione, modello e modello di business. Gli istituti sono Unicredit, Intesa San Paolo e Monte dei Paschi di Siena. Per valutare la solidità e la redditività sono stati considerati 3 indicatori principali. Il Common Equity Tier 1, che indica il capitale di migliore qualità, ossia utili non distribuiti, riserve, azioni, rispetto alle attività ponderate per il rischio, come investimenti, prestiti. Il secondo indicatore esaminato è il Total Capital Ratio, anche noto con l'acronimo TCR, che considera l'intero capitale della banca rispetto alle attività ponderate per il rischio. Sotto il profilo della redditività è stato esaminato il Return on Equity, o ROE, che esprime la capacità della redditività del capitale proprio. Per interpretare correttamente tali indicatori è necessario fare riferimento agli accordi di Basilea, cioè alle regole internazionali che stabiliscono quanto capitale una banca deve mantenere per essere considerata solida. I livelli minimi richiesti sono il 4,5% per il CET1 e l'8% per il TCR. Tali indicatori sono costantemente monitorati dalle autorità di supervisione bancaria, in particolare dalla Banca Centrale Europea e dalla Banca d'Italia. Il ROE non prevede una soglia regolamentare, ma in genere un valore intorno all'8-10% è considerato un valore adeguato di redditività. Il primo indicatore esaminato è il CET1. L'analisi mostra un quadro solido per tutti e 3 gli istituti bancari, con livelli superiori ai requisiti minimi richiesti e con valori compresi tra il 13 e il 18%. Unicredit e Monte Paschi di Siena presenta valori più elevati, Intesa San Paolo invece mantiene un profilo stabile negli anni. L'analisi prosegue con i TCR. I valori osservati nel triennio confermano un quadro solido per tutti e 3 gli istituti bancari, con livelli superiori ai requisiti minimi richiesti e con valori che oscillano intorno al 20%. Con riferimento alla redditività vi è un miglioramento progressivo del ROE. In particolare, Monte dei Paschi di Siena registra il recupero più significativo, partendo da un valore negativo di meno 2,9% legato alla fase di crisi e al percorso di consolidamento ancora in corso, e raggiungendo un valore del 18%. Intesa San Paolo invece registra un valore intorno al 13%, Unicredit invece supera il 15%. Alla luce dei risultati emersi è possibile formulare alcune considerazioni conclusive. Intesa San Paolo si conferma come un istituto stabile con una gestione prudente. Unicredit invece registra valori più elevati, sia patrimoniali e sia reddituali. Monte dei Paschi di Siena invece registra il recupero più significativo, con progressi evidenti e con un percorso di risanamento ancora in corso. Nel complesso i risultati evidenziano che la solidità patrimoniale e la capacità di generare valore non rappresentano solamente un requisito tecnico, ma costituiscono una leva fondamentale per la fiducia, la continuità e la sostenibilità nel lungo periodo. Concludo questa mia analisi con sincero ringraziamento a coloro che hanno reso possibile questo percorso. Desidero ringraziare la stessa Anna Paola Micheli per il supporto e la guida, la commissione, la mia famiglia e grazie a tutti per l'ascolto.
Grazie. La Commissione si ritira per deliberare i suoi voti. Ci vediamo qui fra pochi minuti. We'll be back in a few minutes.
You can take your thesis if you want. Please, you can. Avvicinatevi. You can put here in line, okay? Lira Abikieva, please. La commissione di laurea ha valutato positivamente il suo esame di laurea, pertanto per i poteri conferitimi dalla legge la dichiaro dottoressa in economia e commercio con voti 95 su 110, 95 out of 100. Regina Saidirovna Baigasinova. La Commissione ha valutato positivamente il suo esame di laurea, pertanto per i poteri conferitimi dalla legge la dichiaro dottoressa in economia e commercio con voti 94 su 110, 94 out of 110. Mokina Shakbidinova. La Commissione ha valutato positivamente il suo esame di laurea, pertanto la dichiaro dottoressa in economia e commercio con voti 97 su 110, 97 out of 110. Aibek Makiev. La Commissione ha giudicato positivamente il suo esame di laurea, pertanto la dichiaro dottore in economia e commercio con voti 85 su 110. 110. Marco Rogacian. La Commissione ha valutato positivamente il suo esame di laurea, pertanto per i poteri conferitimi dalla legge la dichiaro dottore in economia aziendale con voti 110 su 110 e la Commissione all'unanimità ha deliberato di conferirle anche la lode. Complimenti. La candidata Martina Siano può avvicinarsi. La Commissione ha giudicato positivamente il suo esame di laurea, pertanto per i poteri conferitimi dalla legge la dichiaro dottoressa in economia aziendale con voti 100 su 110. Nurbike Kristobayeva. La Commissione ha giudicato positivamente il suo esame di laurea, pertanto per i poteri conferitimi dalla legge la dichiaro dottoressa in economia e commercio con
con voti 101 su 110, 101 out of 100. Shirin Berkibol. La Commissione ha valutato positivamente il suo esame di laurea, pertanto, per i poteri conferitimi dalla legge, la dichiaro dottore magistrale in Global Economic and Business con voti 86 su 110, 86 out of 110. Priyanka Babu e Klambe. La Commissione ha votato positivamente il suo esame di laurea, pertanto, per i poteri conferitimi dalla legge, la dichiaro dottore magistrale in Economics and Entrepreneurship con voti 98 su 110, 98 out of 110. Dottoressa Anna Ciardi. La Commissione ha valutato positivamente il suo esame di laurea, pertanto per i poteri conferitimi dalla legge la dichiaro dottoressa magistrale in Management con voti 110 su 110 e la Commissione all'unanimità ha deliberato di concederle la lode. Complimenti. Grazie a tutti, grazie per essere intervenuti, grazie per averci scelto in qualche modo e spero che possiate continuare i vostri studi o intraprendere la vostra attività lavorativa in un futuro prossimo e recente. Grazie a tutti, buona giornata e auguri alle famiglie. Thanks.
Vi chiedo gentilmente di fare le foto in una decina di minuti perché abbiamo un'altra sessione di laurea e dobbiamo preparare. Please guys, you have 10 minutes only for pictures because we have another graduation session right now, okay? Guys, please go out of the classroom. We need to start the other ceremony, please. Just go out. Vi chiediamo gentilmente di accomodarvi fuori, per favore. Dobbiamo iniziare un'altra cerimonia. Guys, outside. Sir? No. Just students only. Students only here for the next ceremony. Per favore, vi chiediamo di accomodarvi fuori, abbiamo bisogno dell'aula per la prossima seduta. Grazie. You need to stay. No problem. We are going to start, double check. For the graduation? Yes. Okay. Just stand by here. Buongiorno. Students only, solo i candidati dentro.
Hello. I'm good. You? Yeah? So finally you're recovered from all your problems.
Buongiorno a tutti, benvenuti. Siamo pronti per iniziare la seduta di laurea che prevede sia delle lauree triennali, sia delle lauree magistrali, sia lauree discusse da candidati italiani in italiano, sia lauree discusse da candidati stranieri in lingua inglese. E iniziamo con le lauree triennali. Abbiamo dei vincoli di tempo per cui chiederò ai candidati delle lauree triennali di presentare i risultati principali del loro lavoro in 5 minuti massimo, e i candidati delle magistrali avranno 8-10 minuti massimo per la discussione. So please, Kairat Zanishev, you have 5 minutes. So I'm the tutor. He has written a thesis on his country and the integration with other countries of the former Soviet Union. Your floor is yours. 5 minutes.
Sì, grazie. Good afternoon, everybody. My work examines the problems of Kyrgyzstan economic integration into the Eurasian Economic Union. The Eurasian Economic Union was created in 2050 to ensure free movement of goods, services, labor, and capital. However, for small economies like Kyrgyzstan, the benefits are not always clear. The main question is why expected advantage remains limited. When joining the Union, Kyrgyzstan expected larger markets and more investment. In practice, there is strong competition from more developed members, continuing deficit, and high dependence on remittance from migrant workers. The aim of my work is to identify how integration affects Kyrgyzstan's economy and where the main limitations arise. The study, based on qualitative analysis of World Bank data, Eurasian economic documents, and academic articles. The theoretical basis includes Wagner's custom union theory, which distinguishes between trade creation and trade diversion, and new trade theory, explaining why benefits often concentrate in larger economies. After joining in the Eurasian Economic Union, trade with partners increased, but a stable deficit remains. Imports exceed exports. Imports from China are also growing, and Kyrgyzstan has become an important transit link for Chinese goods going to Eurasian economic areas, especially after sanctions against Russia. This reflects trade diversion, import shift to partners inside the Union, even if more efficient suppliers are outside. One major advantage is the legalization of labor migration. Remittances from Russia and Kazakhstan reach about 30% of the Kyrgyzstan's GDP. They support many families, but also create vulnerability, such as economic slowdown or migration policies changes in partner affect living standards. The outflow of skilled workers also weakens long-term development. Even after tariff removal, export face non-tariff barriers, sanitary requirements, technical regulations, incomplete harmonization of standards, and weak law enforcement increase businesses' cost. Infrastructure limits related to mountainous terrain, but also slow integration. Investment from development banks and China's Belt and Road Initiative help, but problem remains. Based on analysis, Kyrgyzstan should diversify its economy beyond agriculture and re-export. strengthen institutions, and modernize infrastructure. The Eurasian Economic Union should more actively remove non-tariff barriers and support small economies to distribute more evenly. In conclusion, the Eurasian Economic Union brought advantages, especially in labor migration. However, the trade asymmetry and institutional barriers still limit export potential. Greater benefits require internal reforms, economic diversification, and more active policies within the Union.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Your questions? Okay, so we can move to the next candidate, which is Zangar Karigaliev. Sorry if I misspelled your name. So he is, again, I am his tutor. He is presenting a thesis on the China Belt and Road Initiative. So please give us your results in 5 minutes.
So good afternoon, dear professors, students, and dear visitors. So my main topic of the thesis was about the China's Belt and Road Initiative, and the main course was economic impacts on participating countries. The main goal of the research is to understand how joining this initiative affects the GDP growth and how it increases trade openness and what happens with the external debt. So, Belt and Road Initiative was officially launched in 2013 by President of China Xi Jinping in the capital of Kazakhstan. So, it's a global infrastructure initiative with focusing on the connectiveness of the trade, of the railroads, of the ports, and it includes around 5 continents with more than 140 countries involved. So why does initiative matter? With increasing connectiveness, it could reduce the trade costs and attract investments, especially for developing or low-income countries. And these investments could increase the potential productivity gains, thus increasing the GDP per capita of the countries and alleviating the living standards. Also, however, there are some risks about the debt and the dependency, especially when it comes to low-income developing countries such as Kenya or mostly in Africa, and some Southeast Asian countries like Cambodia or Laos. So my main literature reviews involves different opinions of the authors. Some wrote about the positive trade effects, but a lot of authors constitute that there are mixed growth results because some countries were heavily indebted by this initiative, and the main point there is no clear consensus upon this time of 2026. So what I studied is I used ordinary least squares regression model, which included 20 countries from the year 2010 to 2022. So it was around 260 variables. 260. So my dependent variable was a GDP growth, and we can observe the regression model in which the independent variable is a BRI. So BRI dummy will be equal to 1 after the participation when the country joined the initiative. Also, I included the inflation in order to capture the macroeconomic activity, so the GDP growth will not be distorted just because of the BRIs, because inflation also can cause the increase in the GDP. So it's also important to capture the macroeconomic activities. So the main results was that a countries had an average 0.6% of higher GDP growth compared with other countries that did not join the initiative. Sorry. Also, the p-value equals to 0.33, which means that this initiative is not significant is not really significant to the GDP growth. So high p-value means that there is 37% of randomness in the GDP growth explained. So the link is positive, but it's pretty weak, and there is no clear consensus about whether if it's really effective in economic growth. Also, R squared equals to 1%, which means that this model explains 1% in the GDP variation, in the GDP growth variation. So, yes, as I said before, it can increase growth, but a lot of depends on the institutions and how the country behaves. What are the rules, rule of laws? So it depends on the country, and my model estimated that the initiative is not statistically significant to fully conclude that it is a way to GDP, to economic growth. So for case studies, I selected 3 countries. They have different level of developments. For instance, for Italy, the impact of growth was very limited because it's an already mature economy and developed European economy. For the Kenya, as I said before, it's a low-income country which brought a lot of debt, but at the same time, a lot of infrastructure upgrades by the China, for example, high-speed rails. And the main beneficiary of this initiative I see as transitional countries such as Kazakhstan, which don't have the access to the sea, and they really enjoy the transit benefits because the sea is the main transport in modern world for the trade. So the railroads and etc. is very important for the landlocked transition countries. So they have different outcomes, basically. So in conclusion, the Belt and Road Initiative creates opportunities, but not guaranteed growth, because a lot of depends on the institutional factors, how the rule of law is based in the countries, how they behave, and how investments improve the economic growth in the long term, not in the short period. So final takeaway is that we should wait for around 5 to 10 years to see more results. And Belt and Road is an opportunity, but not a guaranteed economic growth. And impact depends on the country's institutions. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? So the next candidate is Sabina Omirkadzova. She's presenting a thesis on the link between productivity and digitalization.
Good morning. The aim of my research is to understand whether digitalization is related to productivity growth in the Organization for Economic Cooperation in Developing Countries. The starting point of my thesis is the so-called digital productivity paradox. Digital technologies are spreading quickly across firms, households, and public services, but productivity growth often remains slow and uneven. So my main question is, does digitalization translate into higher productivity growth in OECD countries? This is important because productivity growth is one of the main drivers of long-run living standards. A key part is defining digitalization properly. First, digitization means converting analog information into digital form. Second, digitalization means the diffusion and use of digital technologies in economic activity. Third, digital transformation is broader because it includes the reorganization of skills, firms, and processes around different digital tools. The main idea is that productivity effects do not come from technology alone. They depend on effective use and complementary changes such as skills and organizational adjustment. And to test my question, I use an OECD balanced panel from 2009 to 2019 with annual country-level data. My productivity variable is GDP per hour worked, and the two main digitalization proxies are information and communication investment as percentage of GDP, and fixed broadband subscriptions per 100 inhabitants. In terms of method, I begin with descriptive evidence and then estimate two-way fixed effect models with lags and sensitivity checks. The results are interpreted as associations, not strict causal effects. The descriptive evidence shows a clear upward trend over the decade. GDP per hour worked rises from 100 to 115. At the same time, ICT investment increases from 2.33 to 2.65% of GDP. So at a broad level, we can see that both productivity and ICT investment improve over time. However, this does not automatically mean that every digitalization indicator has the same relationship with productivity. And this is the core result of my thesis. Not all indicators behave in the same way. ICT investment aligns better with productivity, especially in growth specifications, while broadband mainly captures diffusion and access and is more weaker and not robust across specifications. Broadband matters, but by itself it doesn't fully measure whether digital technologies are being used productively. Saturation and country differences also matter. To conclude, I want to say that my thesis doesn't say that digitalization has no effects on productivity. Rather, it shows that relationship is complex and the infrastructure is easier to measure than real productive use, and the complements behind it, such as skills, management, and organizational change. And that helps explain why the digital productivity paradox still remains relevant. Thank you.
Thank you. Next candidate is Anel Tokoeva. She has made a study of inflation in Italy after the pandemic shock. Please give us your results in about 5 minutes.
Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Anel Tokoeva, and before I begin, I would like to express my special thanks to my supervisor, Professor Zeza, for his guidance and support. Today I will present my thesis titled Post-Pandemic Inflation in Italy and its Causes, Dynamics, and Economic Consequences. So let's start from the context. After the pandemic, Italy experienced a sharp rise in inflation, reaching a peak of 12.5% in 2022, which is the highest level of inflation since 1980s. This situation is often called as a perfect storm because several factors happened at the same time. For example, energy crisis, global supply chain disruptions, and war in Ukraine. What is important here is that this inflation wasn't caused by strong demand, but mainly by external cost shocks. The main purpose of my research is to analyze how inflation affected on different households. And I focused on the three main questions. What were the main drivers of inflation? How did it affect on different income groups? And how effective was government policy? Let me briefly explain the key insight. About 90% of inflation was cost push and external, not internal demand. One of the most important concepts of my research is inflation gap. Different households experienced inflation differently. For example, poorer households spent more on energy and food, so they are affected more. Another key point that the difference between rich and poor households reached from 4 to 8%, which shows us a strong inequality. To study this, I used a multi-layered approach, and I worked with sheet data from the Bank of Italy and BIMIC microsimulation model. This model helped me to simulate what would happen with or without government intervention. During the pandemic, Italy saved around 140.5 billion euros. However, these savings were very uneven because the richest 20% held almost 60% and the poorest only 3.2%. What is important here is that poorer households had almost no financial protection when inflation increased. Without government intervention, the situation would have been very serious. The total loss in purchasing power could reach 181.3 billion or almost 3,200 per household. At the same time, real wages fell by 6.6%, and poor households spent almost all their income, so inflation hit them much harder. The Italian government responded with about 62.8 billion in support, and the main measures included VAT reduction, social bonuses, and direct transfers. These policies helped reduce the inflation by about 2% and reduce the increasing in inequality by about 70%. To conclude, another key point that the policy was effective but not perfect. To conclude, post-pandemic inflation in Italy significantly increased inequality, where poor households being the most affected. Government intervention remains such as wage stagnation, energy dependence, and unequal distribution of savings. So this situation created what I call a savings trap, where many households cannot recover financially. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. This is not encouraging because we expect another inflation shock, and your work is suggesting that it will hit the poorest in a worse way. Next candidate is Insan Turdubaev, discussing a thesis with Professor Piero Esposito.
Yes, thank you. So Insan made a thesis on the trade opportunities that arise from the participation of Kyrgyzstan in the Eurasian Economic Union, and he also sees whether this increased economic area leads to benefits in accessing and trading with the European Union. So Insan, you have 5 minutes.
Good morning, respected members of the committee. Thank you for being here today. I would like to thank my supervisor, Professor Piero Esposito, for support and guidance. Today I will present my thesis about trade relations between Kyrgyzstan and the European Union after Kyrgyzstan joining the Eurasian Economic Union. I will begin with a brief introduction. So Kyrgyzstan is small and landlocked economy, so international trade is very important for its development. In 2015, Kyrgyzstan joined the Eurasian Economic Union, which changed its trade structure. Even though Kyrgyzstan later received GSP Plus success to the European market, exports to Europe didn't decrease. The main idea is this regulatory difference between the Eurasian Economic Union and the European Union create barriers for trade. In this research, I compared trade before and after joining the Eurasian Economic Union from 2000 to 2023. I used data from UN Comtrade, WITS, and Eurostat. The goal was to see how trade structure and export composition changed over time. The data shows that Kyrgyzstan trade shifts toward regional partners, especially Russia and Kazakhstan. They now account for about 51% of trade. The European Union accounts only about 7%. This means Kyrgyzstan became more regionally integrated but less globally diversified. Looking at the macro level trends, after joining the Eurasian Economic Union, exports decreased from the 28% to 22% of the GDP. At the same time, import increased to about 62% of GDP. This shows that Kyrgyzstan became more import dependent and has a trade imbalance. The main problem today is not tariffs, but non-tariff barriers. Even with zero tariffs under GSP+, Kyrgyz products often cannot enter the European Union market. This is because of strict European Union standards, sanitary rules, and lack of certified laboratories. Kyrgyz exporters must follow Eurasian Economic Union standards to trade regionally, but these standards are not recognized in the European Union. So companies must follow two different systems, which is expensive and difficult, especially for small and medium companies. However, there is still opportunities. GSP Plus allows duty-free access for more than 6,000 products. Kyrgyzstan has potential in organic agriculture, honey, walnuts, and textiles. To address these challenges, I suggest 4 main steps. The first one, invest in certification laboratories. The second, support export sectors like organic agriculture. The third one, improve cooperation with the European Union. And the last one, digitalize customs and rules of origin procedures. So in conclusion, the main trade barriers is regulatory, not tariffs. Eurasian Economic Union improved regional trade but made global trade more difficult. Kyrgyzstan needs to align its standards with international markets to increase exports. That's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
È il turno di Alessandro Varrella.
Sì, Alessandro ha lavorato su una tesi utilizzando dati di impresa e ha analizzato l'impatto dell'avversione al rischio degli imprenditori sulle scelte di impresa, in particolare riguardo alla scelta di effettuare investimenti, soprattutto investimenti innovativi relativi appunto alle nuove tecnologie. Quindi Alessandro ha 5 minuti per presentare il lavoro.
Buongiorno a tutti, ringrazio la Commissione e il relatore, il professore Piero Esposito, per la parola concessami. Nel presente lavoro di tesi che sto per andare a illustrarvi si analizza come la governance familiare influenza l'avversione al rischio e come quest'ultima si riversa sulle scelte innovative. La letteratura corrente codifica nell'impresa familiare una peculiare dinamica comportamentale la quale deriva dall'interazione di 3 dimensioni: proprietà, impresa, famiglia, come ampiamente analizzato dal modello di 3 cerchi di Daggiuri e Davis. La letteratura neoclassica è ontologicamente insufficiente a catturare questa anomalia, per cui il framework analitico si radica nel paradigma della SEU, teoria postulata da Gomez e Meia, la quale afferma che l'attore decisorio familiare subordina la mera massimizzazione del profitto a vincoli affettivi, come ad esempio la continuità transgenerazionale o la tutela del patrimonio socio-emotivo. Ciò fa in modo che qualsiasi scelta di investimento sia un mixed gamble, vale a dire un trade-off modulato dalla percezione del rischio e quelle che sono le prospettive strategiche. Di per sé la famiglia è avversa ai rischi in scelte radicali, mentre preferisce questa via nel momento in cui è messa in discussione quella che è il controllo sull'impresa stessa. Erroneamente quando si pensa la famiglia ha una grande capacità di innovare ma una bassa volontà, poiché in alcuni casi è necessario cedere equity, mentre la family business preferisce agire con l'autofinanziamento, quindi stiamo parlando di del competere in determinati contesti con una struttura finanziaria subottimale. Con questo quadro teorico, da questo impianto teorico, discendono le nostre ipotesi che la famiglia sia strutturalmente più prudente, che la percezione del rischio riduca le innovazioni in tecnologie opache e infine che l'innovazione venga utilizzata come strumento difensivo. Per testare queste ipotesi abbiamo utilizzato i microdati del dataset REAL INAP del 2022, composti da una serie di dati cross-sectional, i quali sono stati poi filtrati tenendo esclusivamente le risposte decisori apicali, poiché unici reali depositari del potere decisionale. Così abbiamo ottenuto un campione di 5.886 imprese con una prevalenza del genere familiare. Passando invece all'analisi descrittiva, come notiamo dai livelli aggregati, la famiglia preferisce l'innovazione di processo, mentre la manageriale prevale in quella di prodotto. Analizzando però quest'ultima da un punto di vista, mettendo la relazione con quello che è lo spettro del rischio, notiamo come nel livello di massima avversione l'impresa familiare riesce a mostrare la sua resilienza e quindi prevale. Per testare le ipotesi abbiamo utilizzato una metodologia econometrica che ricade su modelli non lineari per evitare le distorsioni, quindi sono stati rispettati le nature delle variabili, ad esempio la regressione intervallare per trattare la certezza equivalente, poiché quest'ultima era un intervallo e non una stima puntuale. Di conseguenza è stata trattata la propensione a rischio come una variabile latente e per massimizzare l'informazione è stata utilizzata una stima di massima verosimiglianza. L'order logic invece è stata necessaria poiché l'avversione al rischio aveva una struttura e una gerarchia qualitativa, quindi non siamo caduti nell'errore metrico, e infine il probit, poiché l'innovazione era una variabile dicotomica, quindi binaria, per cui bisognava andare a rispettare l'intervallo 0,1. Ovviamente oltre a questi modelli ci sono state delle OLS con dei test di robustezza dove, andando a confrontare i segni e significatività, abbiamo potuto stabilire che i risultati sono solidi e non dipendono dai modelli utilizzati. La strategia di controllo ha previsto il rispetto del rigore del ceteris paribus con delle variabili sul controllo della struttura e sul capitale umano. Passando invece ai risultati, come vediamo essere un'impresa familiare aumenta la probabilità di ritrovarsi nella fascia di massima avversione, quindi è validata l'ipotesi 1 e inoltre vediamo che i coefficienti sono positivi e significativi. Passando invece a quelle che sono le innovazioni, qui le dinamiche sono divergenti perché l'innovazione di processo ha sì un coefficiente positivo, ma come vediamo per qualsiasi livello di avversione al rischio la famiglia ha una probabilità superiore, poiché viene utilizzata per garantire la superiorità strutturale, mentre per quanto riguarda l'innovazione di processo c'è una dinamica di crossover dove all'aumentare del rischio l'impresa familiare supera quella manageriale. Infine per gli investimenti in tecnologie opache come l'intelligenza artificiale il coefficiente è sia significativo ma è negativo, ciò vale a dire che maggiore è il rischio, o meglio il rischio ancora oggi agisce come una barriera verso questi investimenti. Con questo ci avviamo alle conclusioni dove le tre ipotesi sono state testate empiricamente e per quanto riguarda le prospettive future un'analisi con dei dati longitudinali permette di capire se questa resilienza è strutturale oppure deriva da una risposta al contesto post-pandemico. Con questo concludo e vi ringrazio dell'attenzione.
Grazie Alessandro. Io non ho altre domande.
Okay, the next candidate is Zanskaya Zusibekova.
Sì, so Zanskaya analyzes the evolution of the exchange rate in Kazakhstan, in particular moving from the fixed exchange rate regime to the floating exchange rate regime in the second period of the government and tries to explain the rationale of this movement and whether there has been a change in the economic outcome depending on this choice. Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jansaya Ruspeko, and today I'm going to present my bachelor's thesis titled Kazakhstan Transition from Fixed to Floating Exchange Rate, Economic Rationale and Outcomes. My thesis examines why Kazakhstan moved to floating exchange rate in 2015 and what effects this reform had on the economy. The main aim of my research is to explain why Kazakhstan abandoned the managed regime and to assess the consequences of this decision. In particular, I focus on 3 questions: why the reform happened, what external shocks influenced it, and whether it improved monetary policy in the longer term. The research is based on qualitative analytical approach. My main sources were the National Bank of Kazakhstan, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and OPEC. I analyzed the period from 2010 to 2024 in order to examine both the causes of the reform and its effects. Before turning to Kazakhstan, I would like to briefly mention the theoretical background. Exchange rate regimes are generally divided into fixed, managed, and floating. The key differences between them is the balance between stability and flexibility, which is particularly relevant for Kazakhstan. Before 2015, Kazakhstan operated under a tightly managed exchange rate regime. The National Bank regularly intervened to keep the tenge stable. This system worked better when oil prices were high, but over time it became more difficult to maintain and reduced policy flexibility. The main turning point came in 2014 and 15. Oil prices fell sharply, the Russian ruble depreciated significantly, reserves pressure increased, and dollarization rose. Together, these factors made the previous regime unsustainable. As a result, on August 20, 2015, Kazakhstan adopted a floating exchange rate and inflation targeting. In the short term, this led to depreciation, inflation, and uncertainty. However, it also marked an important shift toward a more flexible and market-based monetary framework. To conclude, the transition to a floating exchange rate involved substantial short-term costs, including depreciation, as I already said, inflation, tempers instability. However, in the longer term, it improved exchange rate flexibility, strengthened monetary policy, increased Kazakhstan's capacity to respond to external shocks. Therefore, the main conclusion of this thesis is that the reform was not simply a reaction to crisis, but necessary structural adjustment. Although it was costly in the short term, it laid the foundation for a more flexible and resilient monetary framework. At the same time, the case of Kazakhstan also shows that exchange rate reform alone is not sufficient. Long-term macroeconomic stability still depends on stronger institutions, effective policy communication, and greater economic diversification beyond oil. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamsaya. I have no further questions.
Erzan Anvarov. Professor Mattia Serafin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Anvarov developed a thesis on freedom of contract and its limitation in Kyrgyz private law, looking, of course, at his home jurisdiction. So thank you, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Today I want to present my thesis, Freedom of Contract and its Limitations in Kyrgyz Private Law. But before, I want to thank all my friends for supporting me, dear audience, dear respected committee, and also Professor Alberto Mattia Serafin for supervising me. So, freedom of contract is one of the main principles in private law. It means that people are free to decide whether to enter into contract and what terms to include. However, this freedom is not absolute. There are many situations when the law limits this contractual freedom. In my thesis, I analyze how this freedom and principle works in Kyrgyz private law and also compare it with other legal systems. So, in Kyrgyzstan, this contractual freedom is regulated by the civil code. The law allows parties to choose their partners, and also parties can create different types of contract, even if they are not directly mentioned in the law. Also, there are mandatory norms that cannot be changed by agreement, and these rules limits our contractual freedom. There are several limitations on freedom of contract. First of all, contracts must not violate public order. Second, there are mandatory norms that parties must follow. Another important limitation on freedom of contract is the protection of the weaker party. For instance, some consumers have less power than the businesses, so the law protects them very often. Not all contracts are valid. Some contracts can be declared invalid by law. There are also two types of contract, void and voidable contracts. Void contracts are invalid for the beginning. Voidable contracts are valid, but they can be challenged in court. Invalidity can happen because of fraud, mistake, or pressure. Also, even after invalidity can happen because of fraud, mistake, or pressure. Also, if a person doesn't have legal capacity, the contract may not be valid. In practice, there are several important problems in Kyrgyz law in Kyrgyzstan. One of the main problems is slow court procedures. Cases can take a long time, which makes enforcement difficult. Another important problem is that people don't fully understand their legal rights. Also, even after a court decision, it can be difficult to enforce it. These issues reduce the effectiveness of the legal protection. I also analyzed Kyrgyz law with the Italian law. In Italy, the principle of good faith plays a very important role. Courts actively check whether contract terms are fair or not. Consumer protection is also stronger, with clear rules and better enforcement. Also develop judicial practice. Consolidated experience of courts in applying the principles of fairness and balance between the interest parties. To see this comparison, we can conclude that Kyrgyz law need improvement in such areas as consumer protection and judicial practice. In conclusion, freedom of contract plays a very important role in Kyrgyz law, but it's not absolute, as I told before. There are many legal and practical limitations how contracts work in real life. The system still needs improvement in such areas such as enforcement and judicial practice. The main idea is to create the balance between fairness and contractual freedom. Thank you for attention. Grazie.
Thank you. Questions? Si accomodi a discutere Valentina Boccucci.
La candidata, nell'ambito della cattedra di diritto dell'economia, ha utilizzato la metodologia della Law and Economics, sviluppando un lavoro di grande interesse sia teorico sia pratico, approfondendo, è il titolo della tesi, l'impatto economico della protezione legale sulla competitività delle imprese, con un focus nel settore della moda e anche con degli importanti case studies, tratta ad esempio dal caso Ferragni, Gucci contro Zara, Balenciaga, eccetera. E quindi lascerei a lei la parola per illustrarci le linee salienti del suo lavoro. Grazie.
Buongiorno a tutti, sono la candidata Valentina Boccucci e ringrazio il mio relatore e la Commissione per la parola. Negli ultimi decenni il settore della moda si è manifestato come uno dei contesti economici più dinamici e competitivi a livello internazionale, un settore all'interno del quale il vero valore dell'impresa non è rappresentato soltanto dal prodotto che essa realizza, piuttosto dall'identità che riesce a costruire intorno al proprio brand, motivo per il quale ho scelto di analizzare il ruolo della protezione legale degli asset immateriali delle imprese operanti nel settore della moda, come il marchio, la creatività e il design, in quanto rappresentano leva fondamentale per il raggiungimento di un vantaggio competitivo sul mercato. Sebbene però tali elementi manifestino comunque una leva predominante all'interno del mercato per le imprese, tuttavia espongono le stesse comunque a rischio costante di imitazione e di appropriazione indebita, motivo per il quale appunto è necessario tracciare un sottile confine comunque tra innovazione lecita e imitazione illecita. Quando è che in questi casi però interviene la legge? Dal punto di vista giuridico, quando l'imitazione si traduce nella vera e propria contraffazione del marchio o nell'uso indebito di segni distintivi, si rientra comunque in fattispecie giuridiche penalmente rilevanti che vengono disciplinate dagli articoli 473 e 474 del Codice Penale. Quando invece l'imitazione non si traduce in una vera e propria contraffazione piena, allora si può parlare di ipotesi di concorrenza sleale disciplinata ai sensi dell'articolo 2598 del Codice Civile, che invece è volto a vietare comportamenti idonei a creare confusione tra i prodotti e atti a denigrare l'attività dei concorrenti. Queste disposizioni vengono applicate all'interno del mercato al fine di garantire una sana competizione e una corretta concorrenza e inoltre ad estendere ovviamente la tutela al soggetto che tendenzialmente viene etichettato come debole, ovvero il consumatore. Infatti, ai sensi dell'articolo 4 del Codice del Consumo, il consumatore deve essere adeguatamente informato ed educato al fine appunto di poter compiere delle scelte economiche consapevoli e affinché tali scelte possano essere consapevoli è ovvio che le imprese comunque devono rispettare specifici obblighi informativi affinché appunto le informazioni possano essere chiare, trasparenti e corrette il più possibile per poter garantire una corretta comunicazione proprio al consumatore stesso. Dunque questo ci fa capire effettivamente quanto si sia implementata comunque la regolazione del mercato e come l'ordinamento appunto interviene al fine di andare a garantire un equilibrio tra impresa e consumatore. A livello europeo la Commissione europea infatti ha orientato l'attività di enforcement al controllo andando ad estendere anche la responsabilità sociale appunto da parte delle aziende. Invece in Italia l'autorità garante della concorrenza e del mercato, nata attraverso la legge numero 287 del 10 ottobre 1990, svolge un ruolo centrale sulla veridicità della comunicazione aziendale e sulla vigilanza delle pratiche commerciali scorrette, andando a garantire appunto una corretta concorrenza del mercato. Un'altra tematica particolarmente discussa e vietata all'ordinamento è appunto proprio il tema della pubblicità ingannevole, in quanto appunto volta a falsare il comportamento del consumatore. Dunque questi elementi ci fanno capire quanto da un lato possa essere importante la corretta comunicazione al fine di evitare appunto dei disagi sul mercato e delle scorrettezze, al contempo invece quanto sia essenziale la tutela legale degli asset immateriali per evitare appunto che brand appartenenti dello stesso settore possano appunto attuare delle dispute tra loro. Infatti è proprio per questo che analizzeremo il caso di Gucci e Guess. Il caso appunto inizia intorno al 2009, dura circa un decennio e si conclude tra tribunali statunitensi ed europei. È un caso paradigmatico in realtà che ha mostrato comunque un coinvolgimento da parte di grandi brand del lusso come Gucci e brand del fast fashion come Guess. L'oggetto principale di questa disputa è proprio appunto l'accusa di appropriazione indebita da parte di Gucci verso Guess e appunto nello specifico comunque l'utilizzo del motivo della G, che in realtà è un motivo in comune ad entrambi i brand. Dunque il caso si manifesta come se fosse una partita internazionale, in quanto vede coinvolti diversi ordinamenti giuridici, tra cui appunto Stati Uniti, Francia, Italia, Cina e Australia, e rende l'analisi particolarmente significativa proprio perché ci manifesta come i diversi ordinamenti giuridici vadano appunto a dare differenti esiti rispetto ad una medesima fattispecie. Appunto gli esiti sono differenti, infatti già nel 2012 negli Stati Uniti il giudice statunitense comunque ha riconosciuto un risarcimento a favore di Gucci pari a 4,7 milioni di dollari, che è una somma nettamente inferiore rispetto ai 221 milioni richiesti dallo stesso brand inizialmente, in quanto il giudice ha affermato che sebbene ci sia stato comunque un indebolimento del marchio, il caso non rientra in una vera e propria contraffazione piena e comunque ha limitato Guess all'uso dei motivi contestati. Invece sul fronte europeo il Tribunale di Milano in Italia e la Corte di Parigi in Francia, dopo aver esaminato ben 11 marchi di Gucci, ha espressamente appunto escluso il rischio di confondibilità tra i marchi. Infine invece al contrario in Cina e in Australia entrambe le corti hanno riconosciuto pienamente i diritti della Maison italiana. Dunque questo ci mostra effettivamente come anche la semplice disciplina sulla contraffazione possa variare sensibilmente a seconda del contesto giuridico di riferimento, anche su scala internazionale. Il caso termina intorno al 2018 con un accordo tra le parti di cui però non sono resi noti i termini e ha avuto dei forti effetti ovviamente sia dal punto di vista economico-giuridico sia dal punto di vista competitivo. Da un lato abbiamo Gucci comunque che ha affermato la propria posizione negoziale sul mercato e l'autorevolezza, dal contempo invece Guess comunque è riuscito a contenere i danni economici e a preservare l'operatività sul mercato. Inoltre sono state appunto anche cambiate comunque le percezioni da parte dei consumatori, in quanto da un lato vi è un segmento luxury che pone particolare attenzione alla distintività, invece dall'altro comunque vi è un segmento molto più fresco e giovanile che pone particolare attenzione al dinamismo e all'indipendenza. Questo ci mostra in realtà come la legge funga come strumento di bilanciamento e come, pur variando da giurisdizione in giurisdizione, il diritto invece interviene al fine di andare a preservare la competizione, la corretta competizione sul mercato, andando a tutelare il consumatore da un lato e promuovendo l'innovazione dall'altro, senza comunque comprimere indebitamente l'attività di iniziativa economica. Piuttosto, in questo contesto, andando a creare un perfetto connubio tra diritto, moda ed economia. Ringrazio per l'attenzione.
Grazie, grazie mille. Non credo ci siano domande. The next candidate is Erkaim Mabekova.
The candidate developed a thesis within private law, focusing on the legal regulation of digital platforms in the European Union, and in particular analyzing their impact on business models. So once again, using the law and economics approach. So the floor is yours, 5 minutes maximum. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear members of the committee, respected professors, and my supervisor, my name is Erkaim Mamirbekova, and I'm pleased to present my thesis, Legal Regulation of Digital Platforms in the European Union. I would like to begin by expressing my gratitude to my supervisor, Professor Alberto Mattia Serafin, for his guidance and support under this research. This research examines one of the most important transformations in modern economic regulation. Digital platforms such as Google, Apple, and Amazon have become powerful gatekeepers that control access to markets, consumers, and data. Fundamental change. I will start with paradigm shift. Traditionally, we had ex-post regulation, react after harm, and prove dominance in court. By the time a verdict was reached, the market was already locked. The European Union has now shifted to ex-ante regulation, proactive rules that prevent foreclosure before it happens, regulating based on structural position, not misconduct. Regulatory framework, 4 pillars of European Union and digital regulation. This shift rests on 4 pillars. The first one, the Digital Markets Act, regulates gatekeepers' market power. The Digital Services Act imposes responsibility for content and algorithm. The AI Act governs artificial intelligence, and the Data Governance Act mandates data sharing. Together, they treat a large platforms as digital infrastructure. Digital Markets Act. The DMA targets gatekeepers, platforms with structural intermediacy power. If a platform meets a threshold 7.5 billion euros or 45 million monthly users or 10,000 business users, it's presumed a gatekeeper. Key rules: no self-preferencing, no anti-steering, and no data bundling without consent. Case study. However, compliance does not always mean real change. Gatekeepers engage in compliance theater, formally complying while keeping control. Apple introduced a core technology fee of 50 cents per install, and Google launched an external offers program with additional fees.
Technical exclusion is replaced by financial exclusion. Digital Services Act, the DCA transforms platform responsibility from passive immunity to proactive due diligence. It bans dark patterns, manipulative interfaces that trick users. It requires platforms to explain content moderation decision. In 2025, gatekeeper X, old Twitter, was fined 120 million euros. It shows us that DCA has a real enforcement power. AI Act. The AI Act uses a risk-based approach. High-risk systems require human oversight. The Data Act mandates business-to-business data sharing on fair terms. Importantly, gatekeepers cannot receive data under this AI Act, preventing further concentration of power. Research findings and my conclusion. My research shows 4 key findings. First one, the European Union is actively shaping market structure. Formal compliance does not ensure real competition. Platform business models are slowly adapting. Smaller companies face higher costs, while dependency on platform remains. Success depends on continuous enforcement, not just legislation. In conclusion, the European Union has fundamentally redefined the rules for digital platforms, shifting from reactive enforcement to proactive design market. Gatekeepers retain power, but now acting under legal constraints. Finally, I want to thank my parents, my friends, my family for supporting me, for University of Cassino, and for Cassino City, which has become like a second home to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We can move to the next candidate, I think, which is Sayed Amir Hossein Marashi. Here he is.
Was hidden. Ecco. So students research in European and comparative labor law deals with flexible arrangements, working arrangements in the era of digitalization. So a sort of overview of the typical employment contract in this new era. So please summarize the results of your research in 5 minutes.
Good morning, dear audience, dear professors. I'm here to present my bachelor degree thesis about flexible working arrangements in the area of digitalization. And for the first chapter, the transformation of the work in the digital era, I start with the form of traditional employment to flexible work. Stable full-time jobs are giving way to diverse flexible arrangements, creating both opportunities for autonomy and risks for insecurity. Second, it's about the impact of digitalization on labor markets. Digital tools enable remote, mobile, and platform work, boosting flexibility and productivity, but also reshaping employment and increasing inequalities. And next level, it's about the drivers of change, which are technologies, globalization, and organizations. Technological innovation, globalization, and organizational restructuring drive hybrid work while creating challenges in inequality, job displacement, and regulation. And conclusion of this chapter, flexibility itself is neither good nor bad. Its impact depends on organizational and institutional design. Chapter 2, concept and dimensions of flexible work arrangements, start with definition and classification of FWAs. And flexible work arrangements include remote work, part-time jobs, freelancing, and platform labor varying by control, legal status, and organization. FWAs offer autonomy, work-life balance, and productivity gains, but can also cause work intensification, inequality, and managerial challenges. The next one is the role of the digital tools. Digital tools enable collaboration and opportunity, but also bring inequality, surveillance, and overconnectivity. Conclude with flexible work arrangements reshape work in complex ways. Outcomes depend on design, implementation, and regulation. Chapter 3. Remote work and telecommuting offers autonomy, reduced commuting and opportunities, but risks isolation, boundary blurring, and unequal access. Second part, gig and on-demand work. Task-based platform work provides flexibility but exposes workers to income volatility and precarity. I think the dictation is wrong, but third part, freelancing and project-based work gives autonomy and varied experience, but brings irregular earnings, limited benefits, and coordination challenges. Final part, job sharing and part-time work supports work-life balance and inclusion, but requires voluntary participation, coordination, and proper regulation. Concludes with different flexible work types carry distinct benefits and risks, shaped by institutions, organizations, and work power. Final chapter, it's about economic and social implications. Productivity and organization performance, FWAs, can boost efficiency, flexibility, and engagement, but may also cause work intensification, coordination issues, and inequalities. Work-life balance and employee well-being, which is a second part. Flexibility improves autonomy and balance, yet may increase the stress and boundary blurring if unmanaged. Job security, precarity, and labor protection. Gig and freelance work shift risk to workers, highlighting the need for adaptive protections. Final part, policy and institutional perspectives. Updated policies and regulations are essential to ensure flexibility coexists with rights, protections, and fair access. And final conclusion, flexible work arrangement reshape work and employment. Their benefits and risks depend on organizational governance and institutional frameworks, not flexibility alone. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. No questions. Passiamo ora ai candidati per la laurea magistrale. Frida Onciaga ha avuto un imprevisto e non può essere qui. Passiamo a Sinvarnjani Thangaisan, professore Esposito.
Okay, thank you. So Sivaranjani made a thesis on the forecasting power of the random forest model, which is one of the recent and widely used models for economic forecasting. She makes an application to gross domestic products in Italy and compare it with the standard benchmark models such as ARIMA and autoregressive models. So Sivaranjani, you have 7 minutes in total.
Thank you, Professor. Good morning, respected professors, my family and friends, my fellow students, and all of you present here. I'm very happy to present my work in front of you all. Today I take you through how machine learning can forecast Italy's GDP. And so this is the introduction. GDP is a key indicator of overall economic of your performance of overall country. GDP is equal to consumption, investment, plus government expenditure and net exports. I use data from 1960 to 2025. It provides forecasts for 2026 and 2027. This is the table of contents: literature review, research objective, methodology, empirical research, and conclusion. So this is the main objective of this study. Analyze historical GDP growth to identify patterns, applies ARIMA as a traditional model, and implement random forest or machine learning model. Compare model performance using evaluation metrics, using GDP growth for next 2 years. This is the graph of GDP growth and economic milestone from 1960 to 2025. So this is a literature review. This motivates comparing between ARIMA and random forest model. Here I use 3 models, or ARIMA and AR1 and random forest models. Here ARIMA stands for autoregressive, integrator, and moving average. And an autoregressive model uses past values only, and random forest capture non-linear and non-linear relationships and complex pattern. Here the data on variables from 1960 to 2025. This is annual macroeconomic data, and target variable is GDP growth. This is the mathematical specification of model. For autoregressive, use past GDP growth as predictors, and ARIMA captures persistent and aerodynamics. Here persistent means past values influences future values. And random forest, it's captured the nonlinear complex patterns using combine the multiple decisions tree. I use quantitative forecasting framework with rolling out of sample approach, models trained on historical data and tested on new data. Forecast value evaluation using RMSE and MAE. This is a prediction error. This is using for prediction error. And in comparison, all models show similar forecasting performance. ARIMA actors captures persistent and trends. Autoregressive actors simple benchmark model. All models show similar forecasting performance. Increased complexity does not improve accuracy. This is the final output. It is GDP growth with forecasting comparison between 1960 to 2027. Up to 2025, it's a historical GDP growth data. And after the trends 2025, it's split into 3 lines accordingly, random forest, ARIMA, and autoregressive model. This is the final conclusion of comparison between 3 models for autoregressive. In 2026, 1.12%, in 2027, 1.30%. For ARIMA, 1.26% in 2026, 1.36% in 2027. For random forest, 1.45% and 1.60% of GDP growth in 2027 forecast. So this indicates Italy is expected to grow gradually without major fluctuations. This is the final conclusion. GDP is, in Italy is persistent. Machine learning model performance as well as traditional models. Limited data reduces machine learning advantages. So overall forecast suggests slow but steady growth in. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's now the turn of Ravi Kumar Gangadharan, Professor Bazan.
Thank you. The candidate presented in a thesis on the inflation in Asian countries and an empirical analysis on the impact of some factors like agriculture production and foreign trade on the inflation rates levels in the last years. Please, Ravi.
Good morning, everyone. This is Ravi Kumar Gangadharan. Before starting my thesis, I would like to thank my supervisor, Professor Simona Belzano, and I am really happy to do my thesis under your guidance. And my thesis study is about empirical analysis of inflation dynamics in Asia, especially focusing on agricultural production and foreign trade sectors. And inflation is becoming a key scenario, and it is a key concern for many policy makers and also many researchers. And due to the present global scenario, we can see that inflation is a very key variable. And it also suggests evaluating dynamics in different cost determinants. And the main aim of my study is to examine how these inflation dynamics evolved across the countries. And this research question is about how these sectoral factors, especially these production, agriculture, and everything become more important after 2019 in explaining the inflation thing. And my motivation suggests to study a relation between PPI, which is Production Price Index, and CPI, which is a Consumer Price Index. From the plot, we can see that there is a stable relationship before 2019. Post 2019, I can see the divergence between the two variables. So it suggests there is some inflation between them, inflation in those countries. My data for the study, I collected data from Food Agricultural Organization and World Bank World Development Indicators, which is an reliable sources of cross-country macroeconomics and agricultural data. This data set covers the Asian economies especially, and I have taken the time period from 2010 to 2023, but the main analysis is from 2014 to 2023, and it is an annual panel data set which has many years and also countries related combined thing. In the beginning, I have my CPI variable is from monthly, and I have converted that into annual averages to get this consistency across all variables, especially like it is something but scaling them. And I would like to study explain about my methodology, which is I have used pooled OLS regression and I applied it for a cross-country data set. And it shows the relationship between, as we discussed, inflation and other sectoral determinants. My dependent variable is consumer price index, CPI, and independent variable is production thing and agricultural thing and the trade-related variables. My framework is about the corporate analysis of 2 periods, 2014 to 2018, before increase in the inflation, and 2019 to 2023 after rapid inflation. I have also added inflation shock model. It is nothing but a difference in the CPI. These are my results, which is this plot shows a stronger relation between CPI and PPI after 2019. The blue plot, fitted line plot shows the stronger relation, significant relation between the structural variables I have. But before 2019, these red plots, fitted plot shows no significant account across all the variables to the CPI. And the other results I have got from cross-country inflation patterns, where inflation increases very significantly around the countries, you can see from this graph. And there are some economies experience substantially higher inflation. For example, Lebanon, Syria, and Iran shows an much rapidly increasing inflation when compared to others. And these differences shows a structural condition thing. And let me conclude my study, where inflation dynamics show a clear structural change. Also, the several sectors have become more influential in shaping the country's inflation. And production, agricultural conditions, and trade also plays a key role. And especially my study is focusing on supply side rather than the demand side of my the economy. My ideas of policy implications is to policymakers may strengthen their monitoring of producer level cost pressures using enhancing agricultural stability and input management. And these countries especially manage to exposure to external price shocks and trade related risk. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Please, Nabil Mikatmi.
The candidates present a thesis on the effect of the spread of digital technologies on the labor productivity. So, Nabil, please show your results.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, my supervisor, Professor Balzano Simona. So, this thesis is about digital intensity and labor productivity growth in European Union enterprises. So, this thesis is about the relationship of digitalization and labor productivity. Lastly, we all know that digitalization is increasing widely in Europe. So I want to understand if firms rising up their digitalization, is the productivity is going to grow also. So the aim and the problematic of this thesis is about to study the relationship between digitalization and the labor productivity across European countries. So my research question, does higher digital intensity lead to higher productivity of the firms? So this is matter because we all know we are in the area of digitalization in Europe and the whole world. So, but productivity is still weak in many countries. And we need to understand this problematic. If we make high digital components, that will lead us to high productivity. And to answer this problematic and throw a solution for this thesis, I found the data, and thanks to my professor that guided me to a great link, Eurostat, for quality statistics and data. So this data is a panel of European countries with 62 observations. So observation for 2021, 2023, and 2025. This panel data means simply each country for each year. If we say Italy, it's 2021. If we said France, it's 2023. And if we say Germany, it's 2025. And this regression sample is 62 country year, observation in the regression table. And my main variable, dependent variable, is annual labor productivity growth per hour worked. And main explanatory variable, the share of enterprises bigger that have more than 10 employees with high or very high digital. So why I believe this data fits perfectly my question? Because it compares countries before COVID, period that we all know, all the firms, they more digital. So the next slide is about the methods I use to answer this problematic. So descriptive analysis is about to understand the trend of the labor productivity with the digitalization, if they move together. And the panel regression is to understand their relation. So the model in front of you, labor productivity, that's equal digital intensity with the year effects. So the baseline model is so simple, even if you see alpha and beta and gamma, it's so simple. We will answer that later. And the main goal of the method is to study the relationship between digital intensity and productivity growth across country and over time. Over time is the short run, because firms believe in the short run, in a short period of time, they can make a lot of money. And we will see about that. So the result that I got from my data, as you see in front of you the graph, that in front, in the upline, digital intensity. And digital intensity is increasing over time. From 21 to 25 is obviously that is increasing and it will keep increasing. But unfortunately, the productivity that is under is sharply decreasing. And it's not just decreasing. It's have a changing pattern. So digital intensity, we can say it's decreasing, but the relation between digital intensity and productivity growth is not well linked. And we will see the reasons why. So the coefficient of the model is negative and not statistically significant. As we see the sample model with the year fixed effect, both negatives. And the year 2023 has a negative and significant effect. This means there isn't a clear short-run relationship between digital intensity and productivity growth in the sample. And to conclude all of that, is digitalization alone does not guarantee immediate productivity gains. And for policymakers, to the people that make decisions, they need to focus on training people, on the skills and adaptation of the firms. And even the universities, for our generation and the next generation, they need to include digitalization in our programs. Thank you very much for listening. Thank my professor. Thank my family. Thank you.
Thank you. No question, I see. So last candidate is Muhammad Harsalan.
Good morning, everyone. Now we are pleased to present the work of Mohamed Ersalan, who developed a thesis on the application of IFRS 9 impairment model, focusing on a comparative analysis between emerging and advanced banking system, specifically Italy and Pakistan. Mohamed, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone. My name is Mohamed Arslan, and I'm going to present my thesis on the application of International Financial Reporting Standards 9 impairment model in advanced and emerging banking system. It's a comparative analysis of Italy, Pakistan, and Islamic banks. First of all, the background of the research is the adaptation of IFRS 9 marks a paradigm shift in financial reporting of credit risk, replacing the incurred loss model with an expected credit loss approach. To investigate how IFRS 9 impairment requirements are implemented across different banking environments, well-established European systems like Italy, emerging markets like Pakistan, and Islamic banks. The comparative dimensions are the regulatory and institutional context, impairment measurements, and the models' impact on financial reporting and risk management. Advanced banking demonstrates stronger compliance infrastructure, whereas emerging banks face data and capacity constraints. Risk sensitivity and market confidence adaptation of IFRS 9 enhances the comparability and risk signaling, yet contextual adjustments remain critical. The IFRS 9 impairment model introduced an expected credit loss framework requiring forward-looking provisioning. Italy advanced banking system implementations are the strong governance, sophisticated risk models, rich historical and forward-looking data. Outcomes are the improved credit risk sensitivity, enhanced loss recognition and disclosure transparency. Challenges are the complexity in the modeling macroeconomic scenarios aligned with supervisory expectations. Pakistan emerging banking system, regulatory influence advanced systems like Italy demonstrate proactive compliance and detailed risk framework. Emerging like Pakistan are constrained by the infrastructural limitations. Risk measurement practices the quality of data modeling, sophistication, and use of forward-looking information vary significantly across cases. Sharia-compliant adjustment, the introduction of financial instruments replace the incurred loss model with a forward-looking expectation credit loss ECL approach. Conclusion, summary, and implication. IFRS 9 enhances the timelines and risk sensitivity of credit loss recognition globally. However, implementation outcomes vary significantly across jurisdictions. Advanced systems such as Italy demonstrate higher model sophistication and regulatory integration. Emerging systems like Pakistan face structural and technical constraints but show gradual improvement. Islamic bank applying IFIFS 30 integrate expected loss concept. Thank you.
Thank you. Bene, la Commissione si riunisce, ci rivediamo tra 10 minuti per la proclamazione. candidati, per piacere, si mettano in fila qui al centro in attesa di essere chiamati. Candidates, please stand here in the center, waiting for you to be called. Erzan Anvarov. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottore in economia e commercio con votazione 86 su 110. Thank you. Kairat Zanisher. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottore in economia e commercio con votazione 87 su 110. Erkaim Mamirbekova. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottoressa in economia e commercio con votazione 83 su 110. Sabina Omirzakova. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottoressa in economia e commercio con votazione 92 su 110. Anel Tokoeva. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottoressa in economia e commercio con votazione 86 su 110. Insan Turdubaev. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottore in economia e commercio con votazione 81 su 110. Thank you. Muhammad Arsalan. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottore magistrale in Economics and Entrepreneurship con votazione 86 su 110. Valentina Boccucci. Con i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottoressa in economia aziendale con 110 su 110 e la lode. Complimenti. Ravi Kumar Gangadharan. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottore magistrale in Global Economy and Business con votazione 107 su 110. Zangar Kyrgyzstan. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottore in economia e commercio con votazione di 93 su 110. Seyed Amir Hossein Marashi. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottore in economia e commercio con votazione di 92 su 110. Nabil Mkdami. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottore magistrale in Global Economy and Business con votazione 89 su 110. Sivarnjani Tangayya. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottoressa magistrale in Economics and Entrepreneurship con votazione di 90 su 110. Alessandro Varrella. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottore in economia e commercio con votazione di 107 su 110. Zansaya Zusibekova. Per i poteri a me conferiti la dichiaro dottoressa in economia e commercio con votazione di 91 su 110. A tutti i migliori auguri per il prosieguo della vostra carriera. Grazie. C'è un cellulare, qualche candidato ha lasciato un cellulare qui? There is a mobile phone that a candidate has forgotten here. Check it out, please. Sì, sì. Tutte e due, sì. Ok.